Hey guys, today we are going to be working on changing fractions to decimals and decimals to percents. There's a couple of quick and easy ways to change fractions to decimals, and then changing a decimal to percent is very quick. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes here going over the quick and easy problems, and then I'm going to create a couple problems that are a little bit more work to change a fraction to a decimal. All right. When we talk about decimal places, we know of the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, right? So when we're doing this, we want to make sure that all of these denominators become either a 10 or 100 or 1,000, okay? Because if we can do that, then it would be just writing the numbers and putting a decimal in front of it, okay? So we look at this example here, it says 8 over 10. Well, that's also read 8 tenths. When you think about a decimal, 8 tenths means there is an 8 in the tenths place. That's all that would be. Now, when we look at the next example, there's no 20ths place. So we need to find a way to make an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. So if I have 20, I have to think, how do I get from 20 to 10, 100, or 1,000? Well, if I multiply 20 by 5, that would give me a denominator of 100. And then when we're creating equivalent fractions, whatever you do to the bottom, you've got to do to the top, right? So we do 1 times 5. That gives me 5 over 100, okay? 5 over 100 is also read as 5 hundredths, okay? So we now have to put a 5 in the hundredths place. So there's not anything in the tenths, and there's a 5 in the hundredths place, okay? So that's what that would look like as a decimal. Next problem, same idea. We had 20 here. All right, we want to make that 100, so times 5 here and times 5 here. Okay, that multiplication sign looks a little weird. Okay, so 17 times 5 is 85. All right, and then 20 times 5 is 100. So we have 85 over 100, which is 85 hundredths, which means the number 85 needs to end in the hundredths place. So the decimal would go there because tenths and then hundredths. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more examples just to show exactly what we're looking for here. Let's say we have 4 over 25. Okay, we have 25. Can I make 25 equal to 10 anyway? No. Can I make it equal to 100? Yes, I can. All right, so I multiply that by 4. Whatever you do to the bottom, you've got to do to the top. Multiply that by 4. All right, that gives me, ugly looking. That gives me 16 over 100, which is also read as 16 hundredths, okay, which would give me 16 ending in the hundredths place, okay? Now, if we're looking at 1/10 here, we already have 10. So that means I need to put a 1. Let me undo that. Let me erase that. That was a mess there. All right, so we had 1/10. That decimal is going to be 1 in the tenths place. All right, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here because there was a couple of examples later on in this page that I think would be really helpful. Like these examples down here. Click. Get me back to where we want to be. All right. So this problem, it says G over 20 equals 65 hundredths. Well, we should know that G over 20 has to be equal to 65 over 100. Okay, so again, we're doing the equivalent fraction. So how did we get from 20 to 100? We multiplied by 5. So you need to now figure out what number, when you multiply it by 5, equals 65. Now, some of us might know that off the top of our heads, and if we don't, it's okay. If we are working backwards, we would do division. Okay, we would do 65 divided by 5. 5 goes into 6 one time. Subtract. Bring down this 5 here. 5 goes into 15 3 times. Gives me 15, and that's 0. So my answer would be G equals 13. All right, same idea for this one. If we have this, 7 is in the tenths place. So if this is 7, this should be 7 tenths. So 7 over 10 is equal to 7 tenths. And the last one, we have 18 hundredths. So we have n over 50 equals 18 over 100. All right. So how do we get from 50 to 100 times 2? What number times 2 equals 18? That would be 9. So n equals 9. Okay. That is how we turn those fractions into decimals. Okay. Now, to give you another example, okay, let's say we had, excuse me, 2 over 6. Okay. We can't change 6 to be to 10. A denominator of 10. We can't change 6 to have a denominator of 100. We can't change it to be 1,000 either. So we have to figure out what can we do then. All right. We talked yesterday about fractions as division. We're going to look at this as a division problem, and we're going to do 2 divided by 6. So I'm going to bring my 2 onto the inside. Okay, and some of you look at that and say, well, I can't do 6 into 2. That's when we add a decimal, and I usually put 2 zeros, and then you just divide it. All right, so we're going to use yesterday's lesson to help us with today. 6 goes into 20 3 times, and make sure you're putting that 3 above the 0 because it's going into 20. All right, we subtract 20 minus 18, that equals 2. We bring down our 0. 6 goes into 20 again 3 times. We subtract. If you have to keep going here, you can add on zeros. Remember, when you add on zeros to your dividend, it doesn't change the value. Now, you're going to notice a pattern here. It's going to be 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. It's going to keep on going. Once you see that pattern of a repeating decimal, just put a line above it and put your decimal, bring your decimal straight up. Okay? That's how you turn the fraction into a decimal if you cannot get a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. And then when we change our decimals to percents, all you're doing with a decimal to change it to a percent is you're moving it 2 times to the right. So it would be 33.3%. Okay. Any decimal, when you turn it into a percentage, like this one here, move it twice to the right, that would be 65%. Okay. Let's say we have the decimal of 1/10. Okay, move the decimal 2 places to the right. The extra place becomes a 0. That would be 10%. All right. It's even possible to have a number like this, 2 and 35 hundredths. Make that a decimal. Okay. If I move that decimal 2 places to the right, that would equal 235%, which makes sense because it's 2 wholes. So that is going to be greater than 100%. That is would be 200, which is this, and then the 35 hundredths here becomes 35 there. All right. So again, just as a reminder, when we're changing a fraction to a decimal, if we can get the denominator to be 10, 100, or 1,000, do that. If you can't, you would divide. And then when you're changing a decimal to a percent, excuse me, when you're changing a decimal to a percent, you just move the decimal 2 places to the right. All right, guys, use this as a guide when you're doing your assignment today. Good luck.